In December 2022, the Southwest story did not look like a software failure at first. It looked like Christmas travelers standing under boards full of cancellations, waiting for a holiday trip to become real again. The storm was real, but it was only the trigger. The Department of Transportation later said Southwest's operational failures canceled 16,900 flights and stranded over 2 million passengers during the 2022 Christmas holiday period and into the new year. DOT also announced a $140 million civil penalty, saying it was 30 times larger than any previous DOT consumer protection penalty. That is the promise of this case, not just how weather shuts down flights, but how an airline can lose the ability to rebuild its own schedule. The frightening part is that flights are not just planes. Every departure depends on a legal crew, an aircraft in the right city, passengers receiving accurate updates, and a system that can keep matching those pieces while the network is moving. When that matching broke, Christmas travel became a crew tracking crisis. The question is why one airline stayed broken after others began recovering. The calendar made the failure harder to absorb. This was the Christmas holiday period, the stretch when passengers are not just moving from one city to another, they are trying to make family plans, work schedules, and once-a-year commitments line up. AP reported that Southwest and other airlines were hit by the December 21 winter storm, but Southwest failed to recover when other carriers did. That comparison matters because it separates the trigger from the system failure. A storm can cancel flights across the industry. A recovery gap tells you something about the machinery underneath. Southwest also had a network that made the recovery problem different. Its point-to-point model meant pilots and flight attendants were not concentrated at big hubs the way they are in a hub-and-spoke airline. That model can be efficient when aircraft, crews, and airports stay synchronized. But if the pieces scatter, there is less slack in one central place. The airline does not just need open runways, it needs crews and planes to be paired again across a moving map. That is where a weather week turns into a systems case study. The normal belief is simple: weather cancels flights, the weather clears, and the airline restarts the timetable. That belief is comforting because it makes the problem feel temporary. But in the Southwest meltdown, the restart became the problem. AP reported that Southwest's outdated crew scheduling technology was overwhelmed, leaving crews and planes out of position while managers and volunteers manually reassigned crews. That is the hidden failure behind the public one. Passengers see a canceled flight. Inside the airline, that cancellation is also a broken link in a chain. A pilot may be legal to work but stuck in the wrong city. A flight attendant may be available but not matched to the right aircraft. A plane may be ready but missing the crew that can fly it. Multiply that across a national operation and the schedule stops being a list. It becomes a live matching problem. If the system cannot reliably know where legal, available crews are, every aircraft becomes a question mark. The storm explains the first cancellations. It does not explain why the airline could not stitch itself back together fast enough. Here is the mechanism in plain language. A flight needs more than a plane and a departure time. It needs pilots, flight attendants, duty time legality, the aircraft positioned at the airport, and updates that reach both employees and passengers. When one flight is canceled, those pieces do not disappear neatly. They move out of place. The crew that was supposed to land in one city may never get there. The aircraft that was supposed to carry the next passengers may sit somewhere else. The next flight then inherits the damage. That is why crew reassignment is not an administrative chore at this scale. It is the recovery engine. The airline has to know which employees are available, where they are, what they can legally fly, and how each reassignment affects the next flight. If that truth is late, every decision downstream is late. AP reported that the crew scheduling technology was overwhelmed and that managers and volunteers manually reassigned crews. At a Senate hearing, a Southwest executive apologized and said the airline was upgrading software to fix its inability to reassign crews after the storm. That apology points to the core issue. Recovery required fast, accurate reassignment, not just effort. Manual work can save isolated problems, but a nationwide holiday disruption creates too many combinations. Now the failure stops being abstract software. It becomes physical. Crews and planes are in the wrong cities, and the system cannot reconnect them quickly enough. The most important systems failures usually have warning signs before the public sees the collapse. AP reported that the Southwest Pilots Union told senators airline leaders had ignored calls to improve technology for years. That is not the same as proving every later cancellation was predictable in detail, and it should not be framed that way. The safer lesson is sharper. Operational debt can stay invisible while the business is calm. Old tools can support normal days, and normal days can make the tools look acceptable. Then a stress event arrives, and the gap between what the operation promises and what the back end can recover becomes visible all at once. The Senate hearing also matters because Southwest did not describe the fix as better weather forecasting. A company executive said the airline was upgrading software to address crew reassignment after the storm. That places the lesson where it belongs. The weather was not fake. The storm was severe enough to hurt multiple airlines. But the lasting question is why the recovery system had so little room for failure when people inside the operation had already warned about the technology. By December 26, the story had shifted from disruption to reset. Southwest initiated a system-wide reset that day, preemptively canceling thousands of flights and halting ticket sales amid concerns that new tickets might be canceled too. That is a dramatic signal. It means the airline could not repair the network flight by flight while still selling the normal promise of travel. A reset is what you do when incremental fixes are not enough. You shrink the system so you can rebuild it. AP later reported that Southwest canceled more than 16,700 flights between December 21 and December 31, causing $400 million to $425 million in lost revenue. Those figures show how quickly an operational failure becomes a business failure. The airline was not just losing individual departures, it was losing the ability to say with confidence which trips it could operate. That is the counterfactual that makes the case useful. If the recovery tools had tracked and reassigned crews faster, the storm still would have hurt, but the airline might not have needed such a broad reset before restarting. For passengers, the internal scheduling failure showed up as a service failure. People did not only need a new departure time, they needed accurate information, refunds, reimbursements, and some way to understand whether they should wait, leave, or make another plan. DOT found that customers often hit busy signals, hours-long queues, or dropped calls when trying to reach customer service during the disruption. DOT also found that Southwest's flight status notification process broke down, so many passengers received no notice or inaccurate notice of cancellations and delays. This is where systems failures become personal. A cancellation is bad. A cancellation with no reliable communication is worse, because it transfers uncertainty onto the passenger. The airline may still be trying to solve the schedule internally, but the traveler experiences silence, conflicting information, and lost time. And the two failures feed each other. If the operation cannot stabilize crews and aircraft, customer service cannot confidently explain what happens next. The visible mess was passengers and terminals. The deeper problem was that the truth about the operation was changing faster than the airline could communicate it. The financial blast radius makes the same point in dollars. Southwest said in a regulatory filing that the disruption would produce a pre-tax hit of $725 million to $825 million. AP also reported the airline's estimate that cancellations from December 21 through December 31 caused $400 million to $425 million in lost revenue. DOT said it insured more than $600 million in refunds and reimbursements for disrupted Southwest passengers. These are not abstract penalties for a bad headline. They are different channels of damage from one operational failure: revenue that never arrived, money returned to passengers, reimbursement obligations, and later enforcement. This is why operational debt is dangerous in a large system. The cheap decision is not always cheap at the moment it is made. It can look cheap for years, until the day the system is forced to recover under pressure. Then the bill arrives all at once. In Southwest's case, the bill was paid in canceled flights, stranded passengers, lost revenue, refunds, reimbursements, and reputational damage that had to be repaired after the holiday season ended. So why call this a systems failure instead of a bad week? Because the trigger and the collapse were different. The winter storm triggered disruption across airlines. AP reported that Southwest failed to recover when other carriers did. The differentiator was the recovery system: crew location truth, reassignment speed, point-to-point fragility, and passenger communication. A healthier recovery system would still cancel flights during a severe storm. It would not make winter disappear, but it would keep enough operational truth to know which promises were still real, which flights had to be removed, and which crews could be matched next. If any one of those pieces is weak, the airline can still look functional on a normal day. If all of them are stressed at once, the network can lose coherence. The point-to-point structure made crew concentration harder. The overwhelmed crew scheduling technology made reassignment slower. The broken notification process made passenger communication unreliable. Together, those failures turned a weather event into a national case study in operational debt. Reliability is not measured only by how a system performs when everything is calm. It is measured by how fast it can form an accurate picture after reality changes. Southwest's public collapse was a reminder that uptime is not the same as resilience. The important test is not whether the schedule exists, it is whether the schedule can recover. The regulatory afterlife turned the meltdown into a precedent. DOT announced a $140 million civil penalty against Southwest and described it as 30 times larger than any previous DOT consumer protection penalty. DOT also said it insured more than $600 million in refunds and reimbursements, and the settlement required Southwest to reserve $90 million in vouchers for future passengers affected by controllable cancellations and significant delays. That matters beyond one airline. It shows how an operational failure can become a consumer protection problem. When passengers buy tickets, they are not buying a perfect guarantee against storms, but they are buying a promise that the airline will communicate honestly, process refunds and reimbursements properly, and maintain enough control over its own operation to recover from disruption. The DOT action framed the meltdown not merely as unfortunate weather, but as a failure with consumer consequences. The lesson is not that airlines should fear snow, it is that a system can be profitable for years and still be unready for the day it has to rebuild itself in public. The big systems lesson is simple: the public sees chaos last. By the time passengers are sleeping near luggage piles or staring at a canceled board, the back end has already lost control. In the Southwest case, the storm revealed a deeper weakness. AP reported that union leaders had warned about technology problems for years. AP reported that the crew scheduling system was overwhelmed. DOT later counted 16,900 canceled flights, more than 2 million stranded passengers, and a record penalty. Those facts point in the same direction. The disaster was not just too much weather, it was too little recoverability. Large systems can run smoothly for a long time while carrying hidden debt in tools, workflows, and assumptions. Then a stress event asks the one question calm days never ask: can this system rebuild the truth fast enough to keep its promises? In December 2022, Southwest's answer was no, and that is why the holiday meltdown still matters. It shows that resilience is not a slogan, it is the boring, expensive work that has to be done before the departure board turns red.